A cold December evening, Turkey. 20-year-old ballet dancer Ceren Özdemir was walking home after leaving the studio where she taught. Each step she took was the end of an ordinary day, steps toward the soup her mother had prepared for her and the warmth of her home. But she was not walking alone. For a shadow moving patiently in the darkness, this walk was the final stretch of a hunt. And Ceren's steps were not leading toward her dreams, but toward the brutal fate that awaited her. For 20-year-old Ceren, life was a stage. Welcome to First Degree Guilty. To join us on this pursuit of justice, simply subscribe. Now let's return to the Ceren file. She expressed herself sometimes through the notes from the piano in her room, other times through her steps in a ballet studio. Art wasn't just a hobby for her. It was a journey to which she had dedicated her life since high school. Even while studying music at Ordu University's Faculty of Fine Arts, her relentless energy led her to also enroll in the photography department. For her, every branch of art was a new world waiting to be explored. This connection to art was only one part of her life. What was truly captivating was the depth of her mind. A notebook she filled with her own handwriting shortly before her death was like a window into her soul. Theater and drama courses were her desire to expand the boundaries of her art. Improving her English was her wish to speak to the world. And her goal of reading books on science, philosophy, and psychology was a testament to her insatiable curiosity to understand life and humanity, despite being only 20 years old. This wasn't just a to-do list. It was the roadmap of a bright, intelligent soul dedicated to constant self-discovery. Ceren's roadmap didn't just exist on paper. She was a responsible spirit who built her dreams with her own hands. She was determined to take the wheel of her own life. She had turned her greatest passion into a job to cover her university expenses. She gave ballet lessons to young girls at an art house. But for her, this was more than just a way to earn money. She referred to her students as "my angels." This deep compassion wasn't directed only at people. Her love for animals was also a reflection of the powerful, positive bond her enormous heart had with life. This life, woven with art, responsibility, and love, promised a brilliant future. But she was unaware of a shadow about to fall upon that bright future. In the dark streets of the city, a monster had been set free and was searching for its target. That day had begun like any of the thousands of ordinary days in Ceren's life. December 3rd, 2019. As always, she had given her lesson to the students she called "my angels" at the ballet course and had left the studio. The last thing she did before heading home was to call her mother and ask her to make that soup she loved so much. Her mind was on the warm soup she would soon have and the peace of her home. Every step brought her closer to her safe harbor. But there was something Ceren didn't know. As she walked toward her home, a monster set loose on the city streets was also searching for its own target. Özgür Arduç, who had escaped from prison the previous night, was a crime machine with an extensive record, and he was looking for a weak target to satisfy his desire for violence. After a walk of about 2 miles, Ceren arrived in front of her building around 7:30 p.m. Realizing she had forgotten her key inside, she called her sister on the phone and asked her to throw the key down from the window. When her sister came to the window, she saw her sibling waiting below, and about 60 feet behind her, a man walking casually down the street. At that moment, the image meant nothing. She threw the key down and went back inside to tend to the soup Ceren had asked for. Ceren picked up the key and opened the door. Just then, she was startled by a calm voice from behind her. "Excuse me, I'm looking for the pharmacy. Can you help me?" Özgür's story begins not with a choice, but with a trauma. He was born in 1986. When he was just 3 years old, his father ended the lives of his mother and grandmother. That day, as his father went to prison and his mother to her grave, Özgür was left to face destitution and state orphanages. According to his own statement, the years he spent in these institutions were filled with violence and mistreatment. This would shape his view of the world. When he left the orphanage, there was no family or future plan waiting for him. He left the orphanage at 18. He began to get by on the streets, committing petty thefts. At 20, he joined the army for the 12-month military service, a compulsory duty for every Turkish man. but the darkness within him was too deep to be disciplined. Shortly after joining the army, he injured a friend in a fight and was examined by a board of military doctors. The diagnosis was a clear warning signal: advanced antisocial personality disorder, aggressive, prone to crime, has issues with authority, is not trustworthy. Following this report, he was discharged from the army. Returning to civilian life, rejected once again, the hatred inside Özgür grew even stronger. In 2004, his desire for violence surfaced for the first time. He spotted a young teenager sitting alone on a beach, someone he saw as weaker and more vulnerable than himself. He lured him to a secluded place with the promise of selling a cheap phone and attacked him with a knife. The young man Özgür targeted miraculously survived, despite numerous surgeries. However, Özgür was caught and received a 20-year prison sentence for this deadly assault. In prison, Özgür was not as brave as he was on the outside. There were no people weaker than him there. He was not a fighter, but a predator who targeted the weak. Therefore, to survive and reach his ultimate goal, he began to play the role of a compliant inmate. He had a single objective: to be transferred to an open prison. According to the Turkish penal system, inmates who show good behavior in the final period of their sentence can, with a board's approval, be granted temporary leave several times a year to reintegrate into civilian life. This system was the legal loophole at the center of his plan. But Özgür's goal was not to reintegrate into civilian life. He wanted to act. For 14 years, he played the role of the perfect inmate, succeeding in deceiving the psychologists and the board. And in December 2019, when he was granted one of those leaves, the cage door had been opened. The monster was free again. When he was released, Özgür had no money in his pocket, but he needed a tool, a weapon, to carry out the plan in his mind. His target was a shop that sold hunting supplies. Security camera footage revealed just how methodical and cold-blooded Özgür was. He examined the displays and entered the shop. He first asked the price of a gun. He chatted with the salesman as if he were an ordinary customer, once again performing the role of the compliant person he had played for years. While distracting the salesman, his eyes scanned the shop's blind spots. And when he found the right moment, he stole a sharp knife from a shelf the camera couldn't see. He left the shop calmly, as if nothing had happened. All that remained was to find the right target. According to his statements, he walked the streets for hours. His eyes were searching for someone too weak and defenseless to fight back. He first followed a young teenager, but then remembered he had also grown up in an orphanage and abandoned that target. His search continued. And finally, in front of a shopping mall, he saw the young woman talking on her phone. He listened to the conversation from a distance. The young woman's sentence was like a confirmation that met all the criteria in Özgür's mind. "Mom, I'm coming home. Can you make me some soup?" Alone, defenseless, and heading home. The decision was made. That phone call was the final signal that turned the plan in Özgür's mind into action. Özgür followed Jiren for about 2 miles, step by step. His eyes were not only on the young woman in front of him, but also on his surroundings. He was looking for a dark corner, an empty street, a place where he could carry out his act without anyone seeing. Jiren turned into a dark street. Özgür slowly approached. Just as he was about to make his move, a man appeared further down the street. Özgür called it off at the last second, but fearing Jiren might have noticed him, he quickly entered a nearby shop. He asked about something for a moment, and then immediately went back out to continue his pursuit. Jiren hadn't noticed him. The pursuit continued all the way to the front of Jiren's building. The area in front of her home was exactly what Özgür was looking for. Realizing she had forgotten her key, Jiren called her sister and asked her to throw it down. When her sister came to the window, she saw her sibling waiting below, and the man walking about 60 feet behind her. The sister was unaware she was looking at the man who would soon determine her sister's fate. She threw the key down and went back inside. Jiren picked up the key, opened the door, and stepped inside. Just then, she was startled by a calm voice from behind her. "Excuse me, I'm looking for the pharmacy. Can you help me?" The moment Jiren turned around, Özgür pushed her inside the building and pulled out the knife he had hidden in his sleeve. He attacked the young woman with 11 stab wounds. But immediately after the act, the cold-blooded planning was gone, replaced by the instincts of a panicked fugitive. Fearing someone would arrive at any moment, he quickly fled the scene. Her sister, Gizem, waiting upstairs, grew suspicious when Jiren didn't come up and went downstairs. She found her sister lying on the floor in the building's entrance. The scream she let out was the beginning of a tragedy that would pierce the heart of the entire nation. Their mother, a retired nurse, administered CPR to her daughter as first aid, but despite all efforts, it was too late. One of the fatal stab wounds had struck the great heart that held all the art, dreams, and love Jiren had packed into her short life. On the morning of December 4th, a manhunt had begun in the city. However, Özgür had spent the night hiding in a construction site, completely unaware of the horror he had caused and that he was being sought. The next morning, Özgür was hungry. Having no money, he was looking for a place to steal food. As he passed a shop, the eyes of the shopkeeper inside locked onto him. The shopkeeper instantly recognized the face he had seen on television the night before. To be sure, he stepped out of the shop, watched Özgür for a moment, and immediately called the police. The instructions from the officer on the phone were clear. Don't lose sight of him, but don't let him know. Follow him. And at that moment, on an ordinary street in Ordu, the roles were reversed. The hunter was now the hunted. Shortly after, plainclothes police teams arrived in the area and quickly apprehended Özgür. But as news of his capture spread, the street was suddenly filled with an angry crowd. People who knew what had happened to Jiren wanted to deliver justice with their own hands, attempting to lynch Özgür. To protect him, police quickly put him in a squad car. But in the chaos, they had made a fatal mistake. They had failed to search Özgür. Seated in the back, Özgür made one last move to attack the police officer sitting next to him. He pulled out the same knife he had hidden in his jacket sleeve and tried to wound the officer. However, following the officer's intervention and a struggle in the car, Özgür was neutralized and finally brought completely under control. As he was taken to the station to give his statement, there wasn't the slightest trace of remorse on his face, only a cold smile that seemed to belittle the entire event. In his statement, he said he had never seen or known Jiren before. There was only one reason he had targeted her. She was weak and wouldn't be able to fight back. When asked, "What would you do if you got out?" his answer was so clear, it left no room for hope of rehabilitation. With a cold expression, he said he would target people again. For him, this wasn't an end, just an intermission. In light of all the evidence presented, the court found Özgür guilty of first-degree premeditated murder. The verdict specifically highlighted aggravating factors, such as committing the act with monstrous intent. Özgür was sentenced to aggravated life imprisonment, the most severe penalty in the Turkish legal system. For Özgür, the sentence of aggravated life imprisonment meant that time had lost all meaning. The pages of the calendar no longer mattered. The hours held no promise. Every day would be an exact replica of the one before and the one after. A single, unending moment spent within four walls. For the man who had instantly destroyed Jiren's future, filled with dreams and plans, life was now trapped in the void he himself had created. Justice had been served in its most severe form. The law had condemned Özgür to the dark pages of history, but society was determined to keep Jiren's name and her light alive. The legacy of art and love she packed into her short life continued to inspire. To honor her memory, her name was given to newly opened ballet schools, art centers, and a square in her hometown of Ordu. The life a monster tried to extinguish is now reborn in every step, every note, and every brushstroke of hundreds of children discovering art. Jiren was much more than a name in a case file or a news headline. She was an artist with dreams, a teacher, a daughter, and a sister. Her story is a tragic testament to how a carefully drawn roadmap can be torn apart and discarded in an instant by a senseless, blind act of violence.